This is the start of a painting, the Lake Avenue Fall Bike Ride. It's done on Arches paper, 140 pound. And the assignment here is for me to paint all the fall colors in a number 3 value, which will dry into maybe a 2.5, so that I have a lot of contrast between the sky color and the fall leaves. Watercolor does dry lighter than when it's wet, and so I have to put it on a little bit darker, and that strip along the right hand side is where I test the colors to make sure I got the same value as I'm painting. So if you notice that the sky in the picture is very, very light, and I'm not going by that, I'm making my own sky, and then I'm proceeding to paint in the building that has got the diagonal line. That will be the side of the building, which is backlit, and then I put in some yellow ochre inside of that, although the blue is kind of taken over on that yellow, but I think that'll be okay once it dries. And so I'm just going to go with a 1.5 Robert Simmons brush, and putting some yellow ochre right next to the building, so it sort of gives it sort of a warm glow inside of that. And then I work carefully around this edge, which is the trees, the sky coming through the trees, and I just have to make this up because obviously we don't have any more leaves on those trees in the picture, and so I'm just sort of making it up to see where we might see the sky coming through. And I always try to keep now a very wet edge, and so I'm not painting with a very dry brush. I'm painting with a brush that has a lot of water in it, and I'm testing that color on that side strip so I can see that I'm staying with the same values as I'm putting the colors down. And it's a little bit tricky, but it's rather fun to try to see if one can accomplish this. And so I'm just kind of dancing with my brush around where the building is. As you can see, right in front of the house there is some greens that you see, and I'm hoping that they will turn out the right value, and then putting some strong greens that are really, really green, and the other one is sort of a muted green. And I'm cutting around, painting behind the head of this bicyclist, and it's very hard for you to see. You can see it in the photo a little bit where the bicyclist is. It's a very, very small figure riding. The lake is over to the left, and so it's really rather a nice fall scene. I took the picture with my cell phone, and then happened to catch a person that was riding his bike. And so I'm going to keep this wet edge going as I excuse me, as I proceed through this carefully, and putting in some of the colors that I think that would be there if the leaves were there. Now this is going to establish, this diagonal line is establishing the ground. As you can see in the picture, it's sort of going down as a diagonal, and I'm using burnt sienna and just a little bit of blue put on top of that wet burnt sienna, just to give me some color, different colors. This is sort of like, if you can kind of use the analogy of baking a cake. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting a large frosting on the cake and building the shape of the cake with these colors. And then once that is all done, part 2 of this video will show putting in the shadows and the decorations on top of all of the structure that I'm doing right now. Here's the burnt sienna going in for the ground. It's very, very light right in that area, and I don't want to leave it white because that would not be the value that I want in this painting. The lightest parts of this painting should be the top of the roof, and also the yellow trees that are up on top. And so I'm going to make this sort of like a little bit of orange in it, a little bit of brown in it, and that shows the pathway. There's sort of a bike path that the person can ride his bike on, and it's blue. And so when I see that in the photograph, right in that area right there, then I will go ahead and start putting that blue in immediately. But this is where I want to make sure that I still have that number 3 value as I go across. Now it looks awfully dark when I'm painting it with the wet brush, but it will dry lighter, and then when I put other dark colors like shadows on top, that'll show those the underpainting to be very, very light. Makes it for a stronger painting. And so I'm just going to keep moving. You can see over to the side where how I'm mixing my colors. I have a large street here, and that's a number, really number 3 value, almost as dark as the sky. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to mix up some ultramarine blue and a little bit of red with the ultramarine blue. So I have more blue than red, but yet I have kind of a grayed looking purple. And then I'll just put that down like this. And you can see how wet my brush and my paper and my brush is, because even if I took that much time to mix that color, when I come back to the paper, it's still wet, so that the colors will blend together. If you have your brush too wet, you can't match the wetness and the value on your paper, then you're going to get all of these back runs. And so you want to try to match it. Now I have a car that's right in there, and I'm going to make that car, that vehicle, the red car. I think that would go good with the foliage color. And all it is just a square little thing that will have a little bit more detail in part 2. And so now I'm going to use the warm color over here across the street. There's a curb. That curb is that curved line is the edge of the curve, and it's hitting the sun. The sun is hitting it. And so I'm going to leave that white as right now, and then I can put it back in as a value, but I think I should leave it as white as the paper. Now we have a lot of stuff in here which is just trees, and there's a tree in front of all of this, and so naturally one would think that you would paint inside the tree with a darker color, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just put this color as a background color, and then the tree will lay on top of it. And so I'm just sort of squinting at my scene. There's a little lamppost right over here that I think I'll put in if I save it. Sometimes you don't save these things because they're so small. I don't like to use Misket because it looked like you've used it, so I try to remember to cut with the brush pretty carefully. That's a little too dark that I thought, so I'm going to put a little water with it and bring it back into that number 3 value. If you squint at it, you can kind of see that all of these values are the same, and I'm going to have a bright yellow right in that area. And I'll just keep doing short little strokes. And the short little strokes is that you don't spread out the water too much, so you don't get a lot of unevenness of moisture. And so you keep going back and getting more paint for your brush and water as you proceed through this whole process. And so now I'm going to just keep working up in the upper right hand corner. I know that's going to be all really nice and bright and yellow. So I'll get this little lamppost in here because I think it adds to the detail of the scene. Okay, now the rest of this now I've got for yellow leaves. And so I'll put this in first, just get rid of this yellow, this highlight right at the end of the street there. put in some leaves that have fallen on the street when the paper is still sort of damp. Kind of leads you up to the writer. I'll put some on the other side also. Okay, let's get a little bit going on that side too. There. So it's not too neat all the way around. Now I've got to clean my palette off because I want this color to be clean without all this other color in it. It may be a good idea if you went ahead and just changed your water. Now this is cadmium yellow, almost pure cadmium yellow. And you can't make yellow very, very dark because yellow can only go about number 3 dark. So I'm keeping it as strong as I possibly can. So it's as bright as possible, and I'm keying it against that blue sky, so that it'll have a nice luminous quality to it when I'm completely done with this painting. This whole thing has taken me about maybe 15 minutes to paint. And then I will proceed with the video 2. So once you see this, you'll have to look up and see where video 2 is on this particular painting. But you see now where I've got the nice dark blue sky and the street, and I'm just sort of picking at it now, just taking some of the whites away that I don't want. And so I hope you enjoy this and try it. It's an exciting way of painting, and the paintings really turn out to be a solid looking painting.